What's up, everybody? So, as you can see, bit of a different setup today, but I still want to make a video this week. So we are going to cover Zaccharie Risacher. And boy, oh boy, do I think that name is going to trip me up at least once during this video. Usual drill before I kickstart things, make sure you're leaving a like on the video. It really helps the algorithm out a ton. You already know that, and I do really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Plus, if you plan on doing any responsible sports betting in the near future, just make sure to check out my link in the description below. As usual, let's start off with the positives, and I think the easiest identifiable positive for Risacher that's going to get people excited in terms of front offices and GMs everywhere is his shooting ability. I think he was a really good shooter this year. I mean, the 39% across all competitions from 3-point really says all you need to know. He's very good at finding his spots around the perimeter and putting himself in a position for his teammates to set him up for the look from downtown, or just obviously the shot in general, and knocking it down thereafter. Like, I really do think that is one of the strongest parts of his game, and I think that's probably the easiest transferable skill to the NBA, although he's got a couple others here that I'm going to talk about. I really think overall he's got really good athleticism. Now, depending on what website you listen to, in terms of like his listings, some sites have him at like 6'8", others have him at like 6'10" in terms of what he's being listed at height-wise. Let's call it down the middle. Let's say he's 6'9". Obviously, the size is there of just a good prototypical wing player in modern-day basketball, and I think the athleticism shines through, coupled with the frame. I think he's a solid slasher in terms of attacking the closeouts. When it comes to his shooting on the perimeter, again, like with the threat of the shot, he's good at, taking that extra step and either, going to the basket and trying his luck there, or maybe even stepping in for a shot. Like, he's good at feeling that closeout coming towards him and just working around it. I think that's another solid strength of his as well. And I think he's a pretty damn good defender too. Versatility in particular with him is a highlight of his defensive package. He's pretty damn good at locking up the wings that he's tasked with, and he's pretty damn good at locking up guards at the very least, in terms of when he switches onto them. He's a capable guard defender as well as a wing defender. The only caveat I would say when it comes to his defensive versatility is maybe down low, he's not as strong as some of the other guys that he's going to be tasked against, so like he can get beat down low, but I don't think he's necessarily like just a liability down there by any means. I think overall across the board, his defensive versatility is very impressive, and everybody knows that with the way basketball is played, especially with the very switch-heavy oriented defenses that you can see teams playing nowadays, like versatility will always, 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 always be a big asset defensively. And I think that is another phenomenal strength of his that I think should be a transferable skill to the NBA pretty quickly. Now, when it comes to his weaknesses or the cons of potentially drafting Risacher, there's a couple of things to look at here. Number one, I think the biggest standout is the fact that he needs work as a self-creator. I think anybody that you look at for a scouting report, like myself included and anybody else that you'll find out there, will tell you the same thing in that regard, that he needs help as a self-creator. He has his moments where like you can see flashes of it, but even like when you do see the flashes, he's not necessarily hitting those shots. He's somebody that is very much so a little reliant on his teammates putting him in the right positions to succeed, which in theory is, I guess, fine in some regards if you have those pieces around him and if you're not relying on him to be a self creator. But like, if he's not going to improve his creation abilities in that regard, that will very naturally limit the ceiling of who he can be as an NBA player. So I think you're gonna want to see some considerable improvements in terms of his self-creation. I think that's a big, big, big swing factor in terms of what he can be at the NBA level, and whether or not we're talking about a role player here, whether or not we're talking about, I don't know, solid starter, maybe borderline all-star. Like, there's definitely some range, and I think this is definitely one of the biggest swing factors. Now, another thing I think I would like to see a little bit more from Risacher is creativity in his finishes. Like, I think it could use a little bit of work. There's a few too many times where you're just going to see a straight line drive from him. And in terms of somebody that has the athleticism, as I talked about, as Risacher, like, it's kind of a waste to be that athletic and that gifted in that regard if you're not going to put it to good use with, being a little bit more creative around the basket. Because when he sees good defenders pick him up there, and like when he is forced to kind of adjust at the rim, he can struggle a little bit to adapt to that defense and to really play through that. So there is definitely going to be a little bit of work needed, excuse me, in that regard. Again, especially if you're rounding out the offensive game, like this is a thing that you're going to want to see from this guy. And very naturally, if we're talking about rounding out the offensive game, like, let's just throw this in there as well. He needs improvement as a passer. He barely averaged 1 assist per game across all competitions, and I'm pretty sure that's because that was rounded up, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was like a .09 something, but yeah, like rounded up, he averaged an assist per game. He needs more consistency in terms of finding the right read, getting it to the right teammate. Like, you don't necessarily need this guy to be a world beater in that regard, but you're gonna want to see it on a consistent basis from him, and that is for sure. So that is more or less my thoughts on Zaccharie Risacher. Hopefully I didn't do justice with that name, although I probably didn't. I don't think I have the proper French accent to do it. Risacher. Yeah, that's my best go at it. I look at this guy, and again, I'm not a huge fan of player comps, and don't take this as a direct player comp, but he reminds me a little bit of a Michael Porter Jr. Just potentially a high value role player, which is mostly what I see MPJ as. And I think that's kind of the first thought at least that jumps out with me, especially considering how reliant I would say Porter is in terms of his teammate Nikola Jokic for setting up a lot of his offense. There's a few parallels there that I look at the two guys and I think to myself, something clicks here. Obviously not a direct player comp. Don't take that one too seriously in terms of like, oh my God, he's going to be MPJ. Yeah, that's not what I'm saying. But yeah, I think the big thing with Risacher is he's going to be a bit of a project. He's going to need time and patience to fill out his offense if he's gonna be a good NBA pro. So I think any team that takes him, whether it be the Raptors or anybody else, like, patience is going to be a thing with him. I think the talent is there. I think the athleticism is there. I think a decent amount of skills are there, but it's going to need patience for it to all come together at the NBA level. And I think that's going to be the most important thing to keep in mind with him. Other than that, folks, that's pretty much it. Just looking at Risacher here, I think depending on the spot, the guy is definitely worth the gamble. But yeah, there's definitely some prospects that I think I like better than him overall. All this being said, that's pretty much the end of the video. So usual drill before I leave here. If you're still watching, thank you. Hit that like button. You know, it helps the algorithm. I say it all the time. Of course you know that. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Other than that, folks, it's been JJ Buckets. It's been a pleasure, and I will see everybody next time.